You can't handle the truth.
I'm Jim Price, the Jim Price Show Daily Update. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, I don't know the date because the government tells me every day, and I feel better already. Anyway, we're going to call it May 20th. It's Wednesday, 2026, but we know in Ethiopia it's 2018. Don't worry about that. It's not a problem. You guys go back to sleep. We're good. Anyway, a couple of different things happened. Looks like Massey lost his House representative seat, which I will tell you, I really like Massey. I think he is a real kind of a guy that I like him. I just like him. I don't know. He may pick his nose. He may have a smelly ass. I don't know. But to him, I just liked what he talked about and how he was trying to stay on course of things. Too many times it seems like we have not been able to do that in our when we see our legislative heroes running around acting like dumbasses. Anyway, but that's where we're at. There's a few other things going on. Looks like we had the Coast Guard graduation today, which Trump was able to speak at that. And then there was a statement that's made, and I got a special guest coming on today, and I'm gonna probably ask him about this, but because I'm really confused here. Maybe it's my Midwest upbringing. I don't understand what he say when he say this. Trump said Benji does what he wants him to do. Benji does what Trump wants Benji to do. So we're going to have that conversation. I feel very confused about things right now, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I am not going to take any more time. We had a delay in the internet. For some reason, 3 minutes before 4 o'clock Central, the internet just went whack-a-doodle. Then I get on my phone. Cox says, hey, we're out till 5:30. All of a sudden it comes back on, so here we are. Just give you a quick rundown of why we were delayed in starting. Anyway, all right, so Jeremy is here. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for being a part of the show, sir. It's been great having you already. I was excited about, oh, that's not my face. Why is my face all big? What did I do there? That's you. Don't laugh, Jeremy. We can see you. We could, jeez, it's me. It's not you, Jeremy, it's me. What did it do? Why is it doing that? There we are. Hi, Jeremy. How are you, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Did you see that? You're not seeing it on the Zoom side. I'm doing it over here. Anyway, all right. Well,
I got your Facebook feed up in the other windows.
Okay.
I saw it.
You saw that? Okay. I got to get better at production. And that's obviously why I don't have a job doing it. Anyway, so Jeremy, thank you so much for being here, putting up with the chaos, which we have had to endure so already. So, Jeremy Slate, I don't know if people know who you are. I'm going to let you just kind of introduce yourself, kind of give us where your education, all your knowledge is coming from, and then I do want to ask you that Trump question when we get started.
Yeah, so I run a company called Command Your Brand, and for the past decade, we've been helping our clients get the message out in the right podcasts. And I, interestingly enough, went to school about 20 years ago for a master's in European history, specializing in the Roman Empire, which apparently didn't matter until the last couple of years. And now I've found myself talking on a lot of large platforms, talking about the fall of Rome and some of the lessons we can learn from them. I actually just wrote a post the other day on X, which was about the Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, when basically the Romans let the barbarians in. 2 years later, those same barbarians turned on them. Now, to be fair, the Romans had promised them food and other things and just decided they weren't going to be able to pay for it.
Right.
And it got some pretty wide reach. We had Elon Musk jump in and talk about it. Senator Mike Lee shared it out there. So I think there is really a big platform to talk about some of these lessons we can talk about in the Roman Empire.
Well, if we understand frequency and we understand human nature, we know we have a repeating pattern. We have 100-year floods. We have these things that continue on, and we know there's solar maximus. We know there's solar schedules. We know there's planetary schedules. We know all these things. We know they all work in pattern, but yet we think we're also very unique because we all get to be president someday, Jeremy, right? Isn't that what we were all told, that we're all just special and
I
stuff?
don't think it works like that. I think you have to either, kind of know the right people, be in the right family that's been around for a really long time, or something like that.
Right. No, I get that. I appreciate that. Well, so real quick, and I've watched a lot of your stuff. I do. Hey, dude, listen. Don't know you from Adam. We haven't met yet. Personally, hope we do. Thank you for coming on the show, the Jim Price Show. We've been doing this for 8 years, working our ass off, still doing radio and TV. But this whole thing with where you have like all the questions you're answering, all the different stuff. I like some pieces you put in for me. There was some blank spots in my history of things, so I saw you doing that, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, that goes better. Okay, now I see that. So when you think of all those things, and then you see the Israel effect of the earth, which we're all now having to redo our history. I was a youth pastor in my 20s. I taught about Israel being, that's our holy land, that's our Mecca, that's our whatever word you want to put on it. Oh, you've been to Israel? Oh, let me touch your garment, that kind of thing. And yet, now we're all having to redo this. So where does all that, can we answer the question real quick? How can Trump say that he's in charge of Bibi with everything we've seen, unless I'm not seeing something? And can you then we can build off from there? I don't know if that's a good question or not.
Yeah, I don't know how he can say that. And I guess here's the thing, too, is I think people want to say that certain national interests have power over other national interests. And I think, honestly, countries just do what's kind of best in their own national interests. You know what I mean? And at this point, to take out Iran is beneficial to the Israelis because it's close to their backyard. So I think people tend to see a lot of, this country listens to that country, whatever it might be. But I think we look at a lot of geopolitical things and we see, what's going to affect prices, what's going to affect supply and things like that. I don't really think that, Trump controls Bibi or Bibi controls Trump. I think, they're doing what they think is best for themselves. And sometimes those interests align.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's where, it just, I kind of wonder where you see that Bibi, like, I don't know. It's the hidden hand. Is that the problem that we all have? Is the hidden hand really a hand, or is it just everybody's little bit of spin that they put into what they're doing?
Well, I think oftentimes when you see two parties fighting, there's usually a third party that we don't know about involved. So in this case, I think it's a lot of times economic forces. That's really the main thing I've always watching through history is what are the economic forces? If you look at even in the Middle Ages, the Medici banking family had a lot to do with, the Catholic Church and the Reformation and everything else. So to me, I'm always watching banking interests. And in this case, I haven't quite figured out what those are yet. I think a lot of it does have to do with oil, since that is a huge resource in terms of how the
banking in itself is oil, right?
Yeah, because as well, if you look at all of these things tend to damage the petrodollar in a lot of ways. So I would want to wonder to whose benefit does that play? And oftentimes, I don't know if this is the right way to look at it. I'm looking at BRICS nations and things like that, because if the petrodollar does change, it does have massive benefit to them. Now, the caveat to BRICS is, yes, these countries have united to start to form some sort of a currency, but they're not really trading treasury bonds in it yet. So it's not really a viable market to move into at the moment.
Right.
But to me, I think it's more about interrupting the financial system in terms of, what's happening there. I'm always looking at banking and those type of things.
Right. Well, and that's a sad part for me is I'm seeing a lot of these things, but I say sad for me because I want to say I see it and I don't see it, and then it just almost a lot of this is out of reach of what we could either get involved with or control, but yet it does affect our lives. And so through the annals of history, what have people had to do to try to create a balance between what government does and that the people can't reach? But you know what I'm saying? Where do we find that balance, the homeostasis? Where is it a republic? Have I been a fool to say that we're a constitutional republic, or we should be a constitutional republic, and that's what I want, or is it something else?
Well, I guess the thing I look at there, Jim, is number one, we're a very different situation than any time in history that's existed before, except maybe the printing press happening,
right?
Because we have this ability to communicate in a way we never have before. So while, powers that be have a different agenda, we haven't had the ability to actually freely communicate about it. So I think that's one thing that is a huge difference now compared to other times. And I think that's why there's been so much of a push to control that communication, right? Because to have free communication and allow people to organize, well, that's pretty dangerous. Now, in terms of where we are on the life cycle of a government structure. Honestly, I don't, and a lot of people tend to get upset with me about this. I tend to think that America has not been a functional republic since about 1913. It's a
Oh yeah.
very, very pivotal year in America's history. And the three things that happened that year, first being the Federal Reserve Act, as well as the Income Tax Amendment, and then also the 17th Amendment, where state legislatures no longer have representation. So if you look at that, we don't really have that bicameral republic structure anymore, where the Senate is basically giving the interest of the states and the House is giving the interest of the people. It's all kind of dwindled into democracy. And if you look at democracies throughout history, I know, Plato has talked about this, and other philosophers have talked about this as well. Democracies ultimately do become tyrannical,
Yes.
because whoever will take that power then that the people then give them, maybe the right guy, may not be the right guy, but eventually you're going to end up in a position where somebody that wants that power for their own means takes it. And that's how, Rome went from a republic to an empire. And that's how those things have changed throughout history. So to me, I don't think we've been a functional republic for a very long time, which people tend to get upset about because it breaks their reality. But
Right. No,
I do
absolutely.
think that moment was pivotal for America becoming direct democracy. And we've really become more of an empire in a lot of ways, because we even have this political class that doesn't really go anywhere.
Right. And I preached those three things on 1913.
I'm glad to hear it.
I've been doing 8 years since I started the show. I was like, hey, you guys know about the Federal Reserve, right? Like I thought that was great that I had the platform. I could finally
I find only libertarians get excited when I hear that. So I'm glad to hear that you're following, man.
I just get all giddy. My face may seem like it's red, but it's the camera. Real quick on 1913, but can we go back? Let me ask you my accuracy or your take on 1871 with General Grant, the Vatican, and the Bank of London, or the City of London. Can you give me your historian version of that goings on and how it really started?
So I'm not as aware of that one, so I'm not really able to give you the background on that one.
Yeah.
I am aware with the taxes they tried to levy after the Civil War, which didn't really take. And then 1913 was kind of the next attempt to do a direct income tax.
Right.
I'm not as familiar about the 1871 event you're talking about.
Well, that's just that's where we really saw the the City of London and the Vatican really the trifecta, right? That little undertone agreement. But anyway, what can you answer some questions for me about is the Vatican really a church, and is it really Catholic, and is it really Christian?
I believe it's Christian. I believe it's Catholic. Catholic just means universal, is what
really?
the term actually means. Yeah, the word Catholic Church just means universal church.
Wait, stop.
Yeah.
It's not like a, hey, because we do this thing. It's
literally the word Catholic translates to universal is the actual original meaning of the term.
I want to quit. I got to get out of here. I don't even understand. Like, wow, why do we just? Okay, all right. So, but the Vatican has a lot of things that go on in it and through it, and power and money and blah 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 blah. How is that?
I tend to think it doesn't have the same power it did, let's say, in the 14, 15, or 1600s.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of those power structures have shifted more towards the City of London, the square mile. I think that power structure has also pushed towards the Federal Reserve System. And frankly, I think the unseen hand that we don't talk about enough is the Bank of International Settlements in Basel.
Yes.
So I think that, to me, is where the power structure is. I really...
Can you give
the weird thing about the Vatican is they have one of the largest investment vehicles on the planet, private investment funds, but I really don't see them as having the same type of power they would have had in the Renaissance or something like that.
You're right. And I agree with that. But it's the religious power. It's that little thing they have. Plus information is always power. Can you give me, I know this about the International Bank of Settlements. Can you describe to people the immunities and the things that they are afforded as being what they are? It's crazy. Like, you guys would think this is like a country, or they are the king of the earth or something. I don't know, but can you give those to us?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. It's a similar setup to the square mile where, basically certain people are only allowed inside the building, and as well, the way it was put together is the whole thing was put together in secret and basically rolled out as the way you describe it is, cause reaction is what they want to cause, right? So
Right.
the moment they want to have happen happens. Then they roll out this thing that they've written kind of privately as kind of the time to have it. So to me, the Bank of International Settlements is basically the central bank for central banks.
Yeah.
And it writes a lot of the central banking policy for our central banks, but we don't vote on it. We don't have any control over it, but it is the governing body of what the different central banks do. So to me, it's very interesting because they do have diplomatic immunity in a lot of ways. They are able to basically legislate without anyone having say on what they're going to legislate.
Right.
And for those of us in our individual countries, we actually have very little financial freedom as it relates to kind of this governing body over all central banks.
Right. I am thrown away by the idea that these people, like, they have, you can't touch them, you can't sue them. They have like their own military, and they're like there's a whole structure below them, right? Of like
The military portion I don't know about, but
Well, I mean,
they do have diplomatic immunity. They do have legal immunity.
right.
And even if you look at the Square Mile in London, the king isn't even allowed to enter without an actual offer to enter the Square Mile, and it has its own mayor within the city of London. So it's called the Lord Mayor of the city of London. So
Right.
it's a very interesting setup that these banking cartels have.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to the Vatican, the Bank of London, and the 1871 thing. So for me on that, this SWIFT thing, I was reading some of the stuff, and yeah, when you're talking about like making laws, and I meant military as kind of like your, it's not a military.
Well, you're talking about the EU army in that case?
Well, no, meaning like they have their own like police force. They have their own little. They're protected. I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand it because it doesn't exist other than in their little system. Does that make sense?
No, it does, and
their-
it's kind of like you have to question why do they need it then, right?
Right,
Why do they
right.
need those things if they're doing things on the up and up?
And if I don't even know who they are, why are you even scared of me? Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like why all the guns? You know, hey, if we're doing tiddlywinks, we don't need guns, right? We're just doing cool stuff. So for you, when you look back through the history of all these things, where do you see the crypto, the BRICS, the AI? Where do you see that fitting in? What we can example from the past and the history of things?
So I don't know that I look at it from history, but I look at what concerns me about it. And when I look at crypto, I guess Bitcoin especially, like not knowing who created it is a really big concern to me, right? Because then, you know, it could be an intelligence program, it could be an individual country, it could be anyone.
Right.
And the other thing as well is if we're pushed into some sort of digital currency, just like they've done in China, well, we lose our ability to freely transact. And at the same time, we lose our ability to decide to transact, right? If you do something that could be against what's expected, well, Jim, they could turn off your money. And that's a pretty scary thing to be in.
Or devalue it. Like, oh, you have $4 million, but you can only buy a cheeseburger with $4 million. You may have your 4 million, right? Does that make sense?
And there was a very little talked about thing that happened here in the US. I think it was about a year and a half ago, where the Fed moved off of the SWIFT system and they moved on to something called the Fed Now system. They had a small press conference and everything like that.
I remember that.
And it is a crypto-based system that our financial system is now running here in America. So it is kind of a weird position to be in and wondering, you know, where is this going?
Well, but that would allow us to know where our money really goes within the government if we're using a blockchain effect, right?
Yeah, but do you think they're going to give us access to that?
No, I'm just kidding.
Now, Jim.
Yeah,
they're not going to let
come
you and
on.
I have that. It's more to see what you and I are doing, right? I think that's kind of the bigger idea is it's a control mechanism. And people talk about, you know, oh, I don't want us to be on a digital dollar, a digital currency. Well, you know, newsflash, your currency has been digital for many years because very few people actually hold paper dollars anymore. Right. But at the same time, the infrastructure already changed about a year ago. It's just nobody talks about it for some reason.
Right. Well, when that whole Fed now, let me ask your opinion on this. Why do people want to control other people so much? Because isn't that what we're talking about? Is people controlling governments? Why do people want to control each other so much? Is there something innately in this through history? Is this always just the pattern that we need to put someone?
Well, I think if you look at it, man is naturally good, but I think there's a small percentage of them that aren't, and I'd say it's, you know, somewhere between 2 and 5%. And I think for those people, they're in fear of what other people could do, right? Because they actually themselves can't achieve greatness, and the only way they can do that is actually by holding other people down. And I think that's what it comes down to, is you do have a small percentage that are truly evil and that do fear other people being able to do better for themselves. I don't have a better explanation than that, but I
Right.
think that's really what motivates them to a certain point is, and if you even look at what's happening, let's say in the UK, I know Nick Shirley's been over there recently covering a lot of the protests and things that have been happening in the UK.
Right.
And I was on, quite frankly, Monday night. I don't know if you're familiar with Frank, and we were actually having a conversation about this. And the thing you really have to wonder is, why would a government want to replace its populace? The only thing you can think about is, I guess they would do it because the people they're bringing in are now indebted to that regime they're in there for, and they're actually replacing you, right? At that point, they have an underclass that's replacing you that is now indebted to the regime in power. And though it's not monarchy, it does become a form of oligarchy, which can lead to some sort of a monarchy, right? Because it is a dwindling cycle, right? You go from a republic down to a democracy, down to an oligarchy, then down to a monarchy of some sort.
And what's the other one? There's another garchy in there. Are we? We're not Are we an oligarchy now? Is that what we are?
Well, I would say in some ways we are, right? Because we do have individual. Because here's the thing: I don't look at America being the power center it once was. I think it's more becoming more of a globalist system in a lot of ways. So I think you have individual people that have power within the system, which to me is kind of more of an international oligarchy.
Right.
I don't know where that goes, but I would say in a lot of ways, we're kind of run planetarily like an oligarchy.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and that's and it's some of that's good and some of it's bad, right? There's things that we have access to that we've never seen before in our lives, and then there's things that we never should have seen in our life. I mean, it's like
I would agree with that, but I think at the same time, it's the thing from Spider-Man that with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think for a lot of people, they've pulled out of being responsible for their own world, right? But we saw during the pandemic, the people that did rise and did want to take responsibility, and those are the ones that tend to get whacked, like not killed, but like hit on the head for kind of being a bad citizen.
Yeah.
So I think there is a smaller segment of the people that would like to be responsible, because if you look at us as Americans, we're supposed to be seen as those crazy adventurers that'll go out and build a country and explore unseen territory. Those people aren't really around anymore. And I think that, to me, says a lot about our spirit as a nation.
Yeah. No one wants to be wrong. So no one wants to go out and do something and screw up because everything.
Well, it's not even that. It's not that they don't want to be wrong. It's also that they don't want to have discomfort of any kind, right? They don't want to do anything that's going to struggle.
They don't want struggle.
Yeah. They don't want to struggle. They want to go see a psychiatrist or something like that and kind of tell them it's somebody else's problem or whatever it might be. And a lot of times your own problems start with yourself,
Absolutely. Well, and that's that self-responsibility, the selfish sin nature of the heart. When we're looking at all these things that are patterning right now, are we in a specific pattern that we could follow, maybe France or Rome or other types of countries throughout the year? Where are we? Do you see us in a certain cycle right now?
So the thing I tend to look at is something I call the Roman pattern. And when you look at civilizational collapse, there's really three key things that happen. The first being monetary debasement, which we have definitely experienced. Since 1913, our dollar has lost 97% of its value.
Right.
Then we also have lack of border control, which we have.
Yeah.
And then we also have politicians losing their ability to see the future and becoming short-sighted and kind of just enriching themselves now. We have all three of those things happening. And if you look at on the life cycle of Rome, it's not like, I guess I'm dating myself here, but it's not like that map in the mall where, it says you are here.
Right.
I think a lot of times history doesn't repeat, but it does have similar patterns in a lot of ways.
Right.
And Rome had this period in the 3rd century that's called the crisis of the 3rd century. From 235 to 284 AD, they had 26 different emperors. Inflation had reached 15,000%. Borders had become a mere suggestion.
Right.
As I mentioned Adrian Opel in the introduction, where 200,000 barbarians in a single year came across the borders. We have a lot of those things happening, and though Rome falls in 476, it never really recovers from that 3rd century crisis. It's something that changes what the empire is at that point in time, because, as I said, I don't think we've been a republic for a very long time. So the conversation of, is this the fall of the Roman Republic or the fall of the Roman Empire? I think it really is the downslide and fall of an empire.
Yeah.
So to me, though it's three things, I think one outweighs all of them. And I think that's currency.
Yeah.
If we can start to fix our currency, it buys us more time to start to fix some of those other things.
Right. So, two things. Do you think Bessett's doing a great job on Treasury, and what happens next to us? I mean, we know we say a fall of America. Does that mean there's a new constitution that's redone, or do we fall into this dark age of things? So, do you think Bessett's there enough to be able to get the Treasury right, to elongate this, and what does it really look like when it happens?
Well, I think the problem is Besant's doing the best he can with what he has.
Right.
But the issue is actually higher than him, right? Because remember, our treasury doesn't print money anymore. They're not treasury bills. They're Federal Reserve notes.
Right.
And I think unless we do something about the Fed, we're kind of in a real dire strait in a lot of ways. So, while, as I said, I think Besant's doing the best he can, I think the problem is deeper and it's not something he can control.
Right.
I don't know that it's in a perfect world, we wouldn't have a Federal Reserve, but it kind of exists as it is.
Right.
So when I look at that, I don't know how we get out of it other than making our money based off something again, right? And I think that's what it really comes down to. Is it gold? Is it something else? I really don't, as I told you, I don't like the idea of crypto.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the hard part of it. So if this whole thing falls apart, is it a new constitution? Do we not call it America anymore? Is it what America used to be? I mean, like Cuba was before Cuba became communist. What does Cuba look like after? I mean, is this what we're talking about?
So I think this goes back to Rome again, because if you look at Rome, it actually never had a written constitution. It had something called the Mos Maiorum, or the ways of the ancestors. We do it this way because we've always done it this way.
Yeah. And
now we have a written
constitution.
Right. We have a written constitution. So that is one leg up we have. Mm-hmm. Now, when Augustus became the first emperor, after the death of Julius Caesar he dies in 44 BC, and then Augustus actually takes that power sometime between 27 and 23 BC. He tells people he's restoring the Republic. And the Romans never called themselves an empire. They still always believed they were a republic. So I don't think it means a new constitution. I think you observe the wheels of power and how they operate. We've become more and more centralized in terms of how we operate. We've become less operating on a state level. We have a political class that they've never held a real job. They don't know what it's like to make payroll. They don't know what it's like to cover their own health care. And they're legislating on things that are never going to affect them. So to me, you look at things like that, and I don't think we ever cease to be a republic, right? We'll always call ourselves that, but I don't think it means we're going to have a new constitution or something like that. I think it's, preserving the republic is something we'll always be talking about, because to talk about it differently, people kind of realize the game, if that makes sense.
Well, as this goes back to, and I assimilate, or I say things that are today's problems because we lost fathers in the home, we took God out of the home, and we're here now. In that way, I feel like that was really like the kick off the cliff for us in a lot of things, and I think the currency thing is a big part of those things as well. It's just unfortunate to see this. So basically, let me ask you a question. When you're saying this, let's say democracy is the middle of the road. I don't have a better word for it, but so then over here is republic, and over here is wear this jumpsuit today. Will America zigzag across the middle of this center line and go more totalitarian and more free throughout history? Is that what you mean by the rise and fall of an empire?
Well, it's a life cycle, right? And if you look at, like, let's say, use the French Revolution as an example, right? Mm-hmm. France kind of reaches the peak of the death of freedom, and they're a monarchy at a certain point. I think communism itself is a whole different cycle of a similar cycle, if that makes sense.
Right.
They're not really going through a monarchy phase. They have something similar to monarchy in the way communism works in usage, right?
Yeah.
It's not the way that it was written down. It really operates more like a totalitarian state. So I think it's on a different cycle, but kind of similar ways of getting there, if that makes sense. But the French Revolution, they brought a republic, and then that republic lasted for a period of time, and then it wasn't very long, so they brought in Napoleon, and he becomes the Emperor of France again. So I think it really is you get to the highest level, things disintegrate, you get to the lower levels, and then things basically start over again.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to be as short as a republic was in France. We've had a republic for, from 1913 to 1790 is a very long time. Mm-hmm. But I do think it means we're heading more to kind of a centralized power system, because even if you look at, Trump, Obama, Biden, Bush,
Mhm.
as much as I've liked Trump a lot of times, I don't like how he legislates with executive orders, right? But at the same time, what else is he supposed to do when he has a Congress that won't work with him either?
Right.
But
Yeah.
that centralizing of authority being delivered by dictate, no matter who it is in that post, shows a more imperial type system, because somebody is really ruling by dictate and a lot of times to get things done.
Right. Well, and that's again, this is the selfish sin nature. It comes back to us, right? We're the little wieners in this whole thing. So the ebb and flow of it really is, the good men makes easy times or nice times, and then soft times make it hard, and then hard times make good men, and good men make anyway. So that's what is that kind of where we're at, where we all get tired?
I would say that's where we're at, and we're headed for some of the hardest times we've had in a really long time. Now, the positive of that, means it's. Have you ever read the book The Fourth Turning?
No, I haven't. I know about it, but I haven't.
I would definitely recommend that, because he talks about similar cycles to kind of what I'm talking about here. And he looks at it more as like an 80-year economic cycle.
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
the thing about that is that hard time creates some of the best, most passionate, most liberty-minded people out there. So it's kind of like the idea of pressure making diamonds.
I'm going to get worse.
Well, things might get worse, but I'm
gonna just be like,
you might get even better, Jim, if that's even possible.
For more freedom, come on, like golly.
But that is what those events create. It actually creates greatness in a lot of ways, and so that pressure a lot of times can be a gift. And in the idea of the fourth turning, we look at these economic cycles. The fourth turning is basically moving into a good and better time. Right. But you have to kind of go through all the crap to get there, which is a lot of what we're experiencing right now.
Right. No, that's okay. I got it right here. Fourth Turning, the Cycle of Histories. Okay.
There's 4 different books on it. His latest version is called The Fourth Turning is Here. It's kind of written, the first version of the book was written in the early 90s, and then kind of as he's experienced a little bit more life and a little bit more of the current economic scene, he's rewritten the book a few times.
Okay. All right, yeah, there's 2 different ones here. I'll have to find the earlier one. Should I read the latest one or the earlier one?
I would read the earlier one to get a primer, and then I would read The Fourth Turning is Here, which is his latest book.
Okay. All right. Very good. All right, I'm going to do that. Good stuff. Thank you for that. And this is where I like getting into that kind of thing for the future. Where do you see that you're going to go, like, with this? Are you going to see that you're going to be one of those that helps guide us away from something, or what do you see the future for, like, with yourself and going through these things? Is there going to be people like yourself becoming more popular instead of the chimping out stuff that we do in Chipotle's in DC? Are we going to see that our knowledges will be praised again, or how does that work for us?
I almost got caught in one of those at a Shake Shack in Baltimore, by the way. Really? We drove away pretty quick when it looked like it was getting bad, because I had 3 kids with me.
Yeah.
But my wife wanted to stop in Baltimore. I said, "Honey, you don't stop in Baltimore." But she was pretty insistent on it.
People in Baltimore don't stop in Baltimore.
No, especially in that part of the city. But anyway, for me, Jim, actually, my ultimate purpose is to kind of raise the level of culture. Right. Because we're in a situation where we're losing literacy. We're losing people understanding their past, their culture.
Correct.
And what I'm really trying to do is get people interested in their history, so they know what's happened before, and so they're aware of what can happen in the future. Right. And when you raise the level of culture, you actually raise people's awareness and their ability to actually do something about their current situation.
Right.
So that's what I'm really trying to do. I'm not really trying to lead a movement or anything like that. I'm trying to take people, make them more aware, and from that awareness, make them more causative.
Right.
And if we can do that, I think that really does help to actually improve conditions, because people, nobody's learned about the Roman Empire anymore.
Right.
People don't even barely learn about American history in school anymore.
No.
So I think we've kind of gotten to a situation where we don't know our past, and people without a past are people without a future. They're stuck in an endless present. So I think that's really what I'm looking at.
So so knowledge and genius will be celebrated as opposed to the dirt we're celebrating today. Is what I'm
what I would hope for, unless you want to try and watch that new Odyssey movie. I don't know.
Jeez, God. We gotta. I mean,
that's a bit of a humiliation ritual, in my opinion.
Oh, I am so disappointed with. I haven't watched a movie in the theater. I mean, I watched what was that one with the space one just a couple weeks ago. But I've seen, maybe in the last 5 years, I think I've seen about 5 movies. That Hollywood has really laid it down. They really,
I have a family of four, Jim. Like to take a family of four out to the movies, it's
yeah,
it's like $100 just to get a seat without popcorn at this point in time.
Oh no, my kids are out of the house, so I don't have to do that anymore. That's
Well,
awesome.
my wife and I have four young ones, so
Right.
I guess that actually makes six of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Well, same thing. I had four kids. So how do we how can we help change this or move this in a direction? So I'm out there pushing on this stuff. I like similar things. You're way better in the details of the old stuff. I'm staying.
I'm kind of like Rain Man when it comes to history, I guess.
Yeah, I get us in the 1600s, 1700s. I'm not that far back yet, but can we, just by us pushing into this information, by telling people like, listen, know what's going on, will that create the resonance or the wave that will push us in the right direction in the future, or do we need an adaptation, or there doesn't need to be a tragedy to create an adaptation to do this?
Well, I think a lot of times people get too concerned that, this not national politician or this president or this congressman or this senator is going to save me a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we forget that, you might have a 95-year-old neighbor that has snow on her driveway, could fall and break her hip if you don't go over and help her.
Right.
And I think that's what it actually comes down to, because I'm one of those weird people that when I see somebody on the side of the road, I stop and try to help them, and it kind of freaks them out a little bit because they're afraid they're going to get kidnapped or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's our society's changed so much that used to be normal. And I think we need to as individuals, we don't have a whole lot of power at a national level. You can't really change legislation. You can't really affect the things that are happening, but you can help your neighbor. You can, run for your school board. You can run for your town mayor. Yeah. You can homeschool your kids like we do. There's a lot of things you can do. You can give your new neighbor that just moved in some brownies, right? Those are things that people just don't do anymore. And I think if as individuals we start to do that, it starts to build community again.
Right.
And communities start to take responsibility for their own, right? If you take responsibility for your small sphere, then the group you're in starts to take responsibility. And guess what? If millions of people start doing that, then the national picture starts changing.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't start changing till we in our own little sphere actually do those things that make us people.
Right. Well, this kind of goes back to when, what was it, King George sent over an entourage to find out why the colonists were not submissive. And he found out that all the populace was learning how to read from Blacklaw's dictionary. Did you?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that one, but it makes sense of something that would happen.
Yeah, that was so. What one of the things they were having a problem with is the constables and stuff couldn't. They're like, no, we're just using your manual, But what they were doing was that's the only thing they had, and they were teaching their kids how to read from it. So the kids learned how to read law book, like that was their basis of language. And I think that kind of stuff, when you think about that, if you teach everybody the rules of the game. And everybody knows the rules of the game, not just the ones who gatekeep it, I think that changes a lot of things. But yes, your effect of doing that one little thing for your neighbor. I say at the end.
And I know it sounds silly, but at the same time, it's like it makes each one of us powerful, right?
Absolutely.
It's why it's something that actually is a really big deal, because if you do that and that has an effect on someone else, and then they do that, that does actually change the game.
Absolutely. At the end of every show, I say the 10% we do for our neighbor, community, or city, or county, or state, and our federal government, the more you do for them, the less they have to do for you. Learn how to be selfless and not so damn selfish. The world will be a far better place.
Yeah.
I say that over and over again. It's biblical. It's, selfless. It's, community serving, all that stuff. And I think sometimes we forget that really is this whole thing we're doing isn't government. It's called life. And life is that neighbor, is that friend, is that children, your family, the closeness of that. And that's what we should really be reaching in, because if we're doing this, then government almost doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, no, it does in a lot of ways, because I think very often people that become dependent on the government are people that become incapable of actually doing, right? Yeah. Because they're receiving food stamps, or they're receiving support, or they're receiving these different things. Well, why would you want to do better for yourself, right? Because you might lose access to those things. And at the same time, you're going to elect people that give you more of those things.
Right.
And those are really bad reasons to not do well in life, or to, elect somebody to represent you. Yeah. So I think it is the core, the crux of the problem. You're correct to say that.
Yeah, that's I'm watching a lot of this stuff go on in our lives right now. When you said that, in the EBT, we can say that's been going on lately, right? We've all seen the stuff. But when we don't struggle, when we don't have the yin and yang, the black and the white, those things that cause us to be better, right? We become apathetic, we become lethargic, we become selfish, and then we just, oh, do for me, do for me. Well, then the government says, okay, I'll do that for you, but it's going to cost you. And like, oh, it doesn't matter. But they don't, I think we're afraid of struggle. I don't think we really struggle for anything, do we? What do we struggle for on earth? Oil?
Really nothing. You have you can go to Walmart and kind of get anything you want.
Even in third world countries, you could probably find some food if you really needed to get in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we have access to everything now, and people don't have to create their own food.
Yeah.
They, a lot of time, there's a lot of people that can survive without work of any kind.
Yeah.
And we're not willing to go through what it takes to become who we need to become. And I think that's a kind of a bigger expression of where we're at.
Right.
We all want to be effective someone else's cause than to be cause ourselves.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and that's that part where we could all skip a meal here and there. And I try to do a little 15, 18-hour fasts as often as possible and then go into the multiple day ones. But, I mean, think about how many people could really get rid of the illnesses that they think they need the paid-for health care if they just kind of did some push-aways. And I call them push-aways, where you just push the plate away from yourself and say, well, not today. I'm just going to do something different. And you start changing your life. But think about if people had to struggle, wouldn't we be more creative? Wouldn't we want to see the value of the shaded tree? Wouldn't we see the value of a meal, the value of a stranger if we actually struggled more? Does that make sense?
But we wouldn't want to hurt your self-esteem, Jim. You might feel bad about yourself. Okay, so I was a pretty good baseball player in grammar school, high school, and all that.
Right.
I was a shortstop. I was a good shortstop. Right. But the coach's son was also a shortstop. He was terrible, but his dad was the coach. Was the coach. So guess what? He played shortstop. So you know what I learned how to do? I learned how to play center field better than anybody else on the team. And guess what? I was the center fielder. And that's what it comes down to, right? You have to go through. And it's a simple example, but those are things you have to go through to solve a problem. You have to be willing to struggle, willing to put in the time, willing to do different things. And people just aren't willing to do that. They just want to say, make that person change it for me. When a lot of times you have the ability to change things, it doesn't mean it's going to go the path you wanted it to go. It might be a different way. But at the same time, you have to be willing to struggle. And guess what? You build character that way. You build abilities that way. Anyway.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. When you think, I came across a science about a month or so ago that the only reason you can't jump 20 feet high is because your brain doesn't think you'll be safe when you land. That's the only thing that limits you, right? So when we talk about why we don't have more great things, why we don't do more great things, I think it all starts up here, right? Isn't this really just the brain of things?
It's that, and too, one of the weird things we're dealing with now as well is one of the greatest gifts we have is boredom. And nobody's willing to be bored anymore, right? They want to scroll, they want to do something else, they want to have 10 screens in front of them. And if you look at some of the greatest discoveries in history, they've happened because somebody had a whole lot of time. Sure. And, boredom is actually an extremely valuable asset that not a lot of people are actually willing to have anymore.
Well, isn't the illustration that we were given as children that Newton was laying under a tree sleeping when an apple hit him in the head?
I believe that's correct.
So wouldn't that metaphor alone just be like, hey, a dude was sleeping in the middle of the day, a tree had a apple that had been there so long, it lost its connection, came down, whacked the dude in the head and goes, whoa, what was that? Oh, things come out of the air and bump me in the head.
Gravity.
I know gravity now, which is the least effective force in all of the universe. But yet that we saw laziness, right? That was an example of laziness when we say, oh, that guy was just laying around. Don't give him credit. But do we not ever just sit there and look at the stars anymore and wonder why they look the way they do? Do we not? Or we just look at an app?
Well, that's some of the greatest discoveries out there, right? But at the same time, we're not willing to be bored anymore. We have to be, kind of like hyper exposed to everything all at the same time.
Right.
And it takes away our ability to think, our ability to reason, our ability to solve situations, our ability to find big problems, which is somehow how the biggest businesses are made. If you solve a really big problem for a lot of people, you're going to make a lot of money.
There's a lot of psychological evidence to that people who are put under extreme stressors, even at young ages, even traumas and things of house burning down, loss of this, loss of that, that they become hyper acute and problem solvers because of the stressors that they were put in. I haven't ran from a lion, but I guarantee you I'd be figuring out some tree climbing skills and some other, like, hey, I don't like this thing going on here. I'm going to figure this out. But when's the last time?
And then you could start a business teaching, protecting other people from lions because you figured out how to do it, my man.
I'm the guy, right? I'm selling memberships. And so, but this is where we don't even struggle to, like, when we think about going down to Quick Trip or whatever, Wawa or whatever's near you, and you go down there and you expect that Pepsi and the Coca-Cola just to be ready. And it's like, you didn't even think about all the things that had to happen to bother to get that high fructose corn syrup into your body. This is where we don't understand what it really means. I guess it goes back to the analogy of sell me or make a pencil. How do you make a pencil? Can any one person make a pencil? Well, that's almost impossible because you have to mine graphite, wood, paint, metal, rubber, the whole thing. But yet a community can bring it together. But also that industrialization also keeps us from being problem solvers to figure out where an eraser material comes from, right?
No, and I think that's what it comes down to is if you have to solve problems, you're going to start to find creative solutions. And when you get creative, you're going to find some pretty amazing solutions. But we've kind of gotten out of that mindset as a society.
Absolutely. Well, a couple of things. We got about I got about 3 or 4 minutes here before I got to get you out of here. I was trying to keep you on for the 45 minutes. We're going to run a little long past 5. But give us a couple of things that you really want us to hear, motivate us, scare us a little bit, give us that, but also how we can find you and where your website and everything's at.
Well, the thing I would say is number one, it gets back to currency. And if you look at kind of how the Roman Empire solved currency, it's split into East and West in the 280s. It has individual Eastern and Western empires. Then Constantine reunites it in the early 300s, and then it's going to split again in the late 4th century. But one of the things Constantine does is in the year 314, he mints less than 100 gold coins. And then every year until he dies in 336, he's going to continue to mint gold coins. By the time he dies, Rome is on a gold standard. And that is the main reason that the Eastern Empire survives until about the year 1000 without inflation. Now, it's going to go another 400 years after that, but they have no inflation from that 336 date until the early thousands. I believe it's around 1054. We see that change. Mm-hmm. So if we can start to solve our currency, it buys us a lot more time for a lot of these other things. But we have to get rid of the people that are handling our currency, right? So that the Federal Reserve, we have to figure out how to get around that. Mm-hmm. And so there's some issues that have to happen there. Right. So I would say for the individual person, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Take care of your neighbor, take care of your friends, take care of your family, start homeschooling your kids, and get involved in your school board, your town, whatever it might be. Those are things you can all do. Mm-hmm. Because what happens is when people get to a certain point where they feel like they can do nothing, they do nothing. Right. And that's when evil wins, is when good people do nothing. So I think that's really the lesson we all have to learn is there is something that can be done about it, and it is you that can do it. And it really comes down to being involved in your community. I have 2 separate ways that I put content out there for people if they're interested in learning more about history. I have 2 channels. The first is called Hidden Forces in History. We talk about history and the power structures behind it. I spent a lot of time on medieval banking, which I think is kind of the head of the beast. Mm-hmm. And then my other channel is called The Roman Pattern. We look at the pattern of Rome applied to civilizational collapse, because I think it is the best example of how things do work. Right. My company is called Command Your Brand, and we help our clients to get their message out on the right podcasts. We're over at commandyourbrand.com.
Very good. Well, Jeremy, this has been great. I really do appreciate you coming on. If there's anything, if you want to do a series, whatever, you want specific topics, jump back on, whatever, let me know. I'm your muse. Let's do this whole thing. I really do appreciate how you really bring it in, and you're very assertive with what you're doing. So thank you for being articulate. Anything else you want to drop before we get you out of here?
No, I would just say, go check me out on X. It's where I'm most active, and, glad to help anybody out there in your audience.
Absolutely. All right, Ryan, thank you so much. Why do I keep calling you Ryan? I called you Ryan 3 times.
It's my middle name. My
That's
parents
right.
named me after it. My parents named me after a cowboy actor, so I have to use my first and middle name.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna let that go right there. Hey, we'll get that on a future update there. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for being
Thanks
here.
for having me.
You bet, buddy. We'll talk to you soon. All right, bye. All right, guys. Well, what a great interview that was. And for some reason, why am I not getting? There it is. There we go. Sorry about that. What a great interview. I do appreciate Jeremy. Yes, I screwed up a few things there in calling him Ryan, but I got his name is actually Jeremy Ryan Slade. So I want us to hear what he was saying and the idea that this isn't the end. It doesn't have to be that way. And I think what he's talking about is something that we can control in a way that we know. Like, okay, let me give you this. If you're in a boat in high seas, and I have never been in a boat in high seas, so I'm just using movie metaphors and things I've seen from the Coast Guard videos during hurricanes. But if you're in the boat and you're prepared for the next big wave, like you know it's coming, you feel it, you're coming in, bam, you know that boat's going to dive right through that next wave. You're prepared for it. It doesn't feel good, but you know how to handle it. And each time you do it, it becomes you know how to do it, right? You get used to it. Not that we need to get used to how to have our country fall apart, but when you listen to the cautionary tales, when you listen to how things are, do you go through a financial collapse because in 2008 and 9 there was a housing collapse? Or do you go in? Do you have a 2012 or 14 collapse? Or do you collapse with the collapses, or do you figure out a way to hit just the tops of the crests of the waves? Right? Do you take the troughs and the peaks and the troughs and the peaks because that's what you like, or do you try to find out that middle ground? And I think a lot of times because we don't put effort into things, we're out there trying. That's why we find ourselves in the bottoms and in the tops, the troughs and the peaks. Again, I think we need to figure that out. And what did Jeremy say? He said, together, come together, help each other out, be each other's community, be those things. So let's figure that out. And, anyway, thank you for all the great comments. Good to see everybody out there. Charlie, thank you for your stuff. Brenda was there. Charlie Heiserman was in there. Guys, I did not see everything the whole way because there was an issue with the comment collector on Restream. So I wasn't able to see everybody, so apologize if I didn't call out your name. If you're out there doing stuff, thank you so much. Remember, like, share, and comment as often as possible. Guys, remember, this world is yours, and make it what you want it to be. Quit acting like you're not involved here. You are the observer. You are the first person. Go out there and act like it. Make your world what you want it to be. Remember, just do the 10% we do for our neighbor, community, city, county, state, the federal government. The more you do for them, the less they have to do for you. Learn how to be selfless. Woo! Didn't do a good job on that. Learn how to be selfless and not so damn selfish. The world will be a far, far better place. Remember, hold the line, hold fast, do not give up, do not give in. We'll win. I promise, I make a promise I can't keep, guys. You've always been the answer out there. Remember that Constitution thingy? Well, that limits the government, never limits you. You got to understand your authority, know where your power comes from. I do love that Jeremy's talking about 1913, 1871. These are all the things we talk about, and I do love that this guy's out there trying to let people know that there's a better way to do this, and we don't have to make it sloppy and messy. Or even if it is sloppy and messy, let's be the people that just ride across the tops of those peaks of those waves. All right, guys, that's about it for me. Good to see everybody out there. Good stuff. Thank you so much for all you guys are doing out there. I do have one more day this week. I'm taking off Friday and heading over to Missouri, Knoll, Missouri, for a float trip this weekend. If you guys are in Knoll, Missouri, let me know. Hit me up. We'll be out there floating. So if you guys want to come out to Knoll, Missouri this weekend, hit me up and we'll work it out. So anyway, guys, that's about it for me. I'm Jim Price, the Jim Price Show Daily Update. You guys all be good to each other out there, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.